Meanwhile, by the way, behind the scenes, a little spilling of the tea behind the scenes. The Kamala Harris campaign is reportedly in meltdown over what's been happening in the past week. Her staff are freaking out. She herself and her inner circle are apparently, let's just say, tempers are heightened in the Kamala Harris campaign right now because their appeal to men has been backfiring. Trump, by the way, is outpacing Kamala in getting men's votes so much more than any candidate, any Republican candidate versus a Democrat candidate in recent history. So her appeal to men, which was that I am a man video and promises of drugs, weed, and free money, and women won't vote for you and sleep with you if you don't vote for me, that's all backfiring. We're going to talk about that in a minute because they actually just trotted out Michelle Obama to make an appeal to men to vote for Kamala Harris, and it was super ugly. But that, in combination with their October surprise, which we covered last week, the Atlantic article reported, quote unquote, reported by Jeffrey Goldberg about the Hitler general. The Hitler general hoax was debunked immediately. The quote unquote effing Mexican lie was debunked immediately. If you guys didn't see that episode from last week, go back on YouTube or Spotify, look up October surprise, Liz Wheeler, listen to that episode because I walk through step by step exactly how to deconstruct that lie, which was supposed to be the Democrats' October surprise that they dropped against Trump, and it was not effective. They thought it was going to be effective because they tried this before, not Kamala Harris specifically, but the Democrat apparatus used this strategy before, and it was effective. When Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic published the so-called suckers and losers story against Trump, that was very effective, I am sorry to say, in people's perception of Trump. People believed that because at the time, people believed military generals and believed The Atlantic. So your centrist or your independent voter or your moderate Democrat, even your borderline never Trump Republican, believed that story at the time. So Kamala Harris replicated that playbook. They thought it would work, but it didn't work. They're freaking out because this is what they had. This is what they had. And so, of course, several of us last week said, hey, you know what's going to come next, of course, after this fake news story? They're going to trot out allegations of sexual misconduct against Trump. Guarantee it. It was literally just hours later after we said this that, yep, that's the story that dropped. Some woman said he grabbed my ASS. That was also debunked, I think, within like 5 minutes of that story dropping. And so Kamala Harris, picture her campaign just like throwing accusations at the wall, one after the other, and none of them are sticking. None of them are sticking. And that's resulted in the Real Clear Politics poll. That's an average of all the different polls. Now have Trump and Kamala Harris essentially tied. Trump is at 48.5. Kamala is at 48.4. So obviously an effective tie. Also, when I look at that, I see Trump being ahead, not just because he's ahead by a 1% or a tenth of a percentage point, but because Trump typically polls lower than his actual election results. The Wall Street Journal also reported that Kamala is losing, or when I say reported, they ran a poll that showed Kamala Harris losing the popular vote by 3 points. So Kamala Harris's campaign is in absolute meltdown mode. They're so desperate that after Trump's Madison Square Garden rally, they have trotted out their usual propaganda voices like MSNBC to claim that the rally was a Nazi rally. Take a look at this.
But that jamboree happening right now, you see it there on your screen, in that place is particularly chilling because in 1939, more than 20,000 supporters of a different fascist leader, Adolf Hitler, packed the garden for a so-called pro-America rally, a rally where speakers voiced anti-Semitic rhetoric from a stage draped with Nazi banners. When a Jewish protester rushed the stage, the Associated Press reported, quote, instantly, a dozen or more stormtroopers set upon him, knocking him down and beating him as he held his head in his arms. Most of his clothing was torn from his body. Later, he was booked for disorderly conduct. Now, against that backdrop of history, Donald Trump, the man who has threatened to use the military against opponents he calls enemies from within, who has threatened to use the troops to quell what he says are lawless cities, and to use those troops to carry out mass deportations of immigrants, is once again turning Madison Square Garden into a staging ground for extremism.
Do you have a visceral reaction to that? Because I have a visceral reaction to that. That reports like that, they're not just laughable propaganda or easily debunkable lies. They're both of that. They actually make me feel outraged, even a little angry, because they are such egregious lies, like such immoral lies. Like Madison Square Garden, that's what you compare the Trump rally to, that you call it a jamboree, and then you juxtapose it against a Nazi rally, even though Madison Square Garden literally hosts large events every single day of the week and has since they opened. This shows how desperate the Kamala Harris campaign is, but it also is frightening because this is what Kamala Harris thinks of you. Kamala Harris thinks that you are no better than a supporter of Hitler. And what historically have we done to supporters of Hitler? There are actually still trials putting now aged Nazis on trial to put them in prison for life for crimes they committed during the Third Reich. That's what Kamala Harris thinks of us. The mainstream media are not saying this because they think this independently. They're saying this because they're getting their marching orders from the Kamala Harris campaign. All right, if one thing has been made perfectly clear during this election cycle, something we already know, but we're just we've gotten more tangible evidence. It's that the mainstream media is not only an objective source of news. They are not journalists. They are not reporting on what's happening. They are not holding government accountable. They are actual propaganda arms of a Democrat Party who hates us, you and I, because of what we believe, whether we're Christian, whether we're conservative, whether we vote for Trump. They actually revile us. And the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party, the mainstream media, their goal is to bolster the mainstream media in their pursuit of power. And so it is time to reject the mainstream media, time to seek an alternative. And Blaze Media is the antidote to this problem. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we're doing. While mainstream media outlets distort and deceive and disparage, Blaze Media is committed to delivering the truth for those who love and fight for the American way of life. We are proud to be Americans. We refuse to be controlled or silenced at a time when media manipulation is at its peak. This is like nothing I've ever seen before. And I've been in the media for a long time now. Independent platforms like Blaze TV are more crucial than ever. We are here to challenge the narrative and provide real, unfiltered coverage that puts you in control. That's why right now we're offering our biggest discount yet, $40 off your annual subscription. If you love this show and you support what Blaze Media stands for, visit blazetv.com/Liz. Use my promo code Liz40 at checkout and you can join our movement. America, you deserve the truth. And Blaze Media is here to deliver it. Go to blazetv.com/Liz. Use my promo code Liz40 to join the movement. So Kamala Harris is desperate, and that makes me happy. I want her to be desperate. I want her to lose. But it's also, if you know anyone who has not yet cast their vote for Donald Trump, you show them that specific quote-unquote report. In the news industry, we call that a package, where it's like basically an op-ed, but presented as a voiceover. You show them that package from MSNBC, and you say, if you're a Christian, if you're a conservative, if you have ever criticized Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, maybe on gas prices, on grocery prices, on inflation in general, if you don't think that we should ban gas-powered vehicles, if you don't think that we should be getting involved in more foreign wars, if you think that they're spending too much, if you're against critical race theory, children being taught that they're racist just because they're white, that they're oppressed just because they're black, if you don't think that young adults should be transed, then Kamala Harris thinks that you are a supporter of actual Nazis and wants to treat you like a Hitler supporter. That's it. It doesn't even matter if you like Trump. This is not about the personality of candidates. This is about what Kamala Harris is going to do to us as conservatives.